been a really busy month, but I'm glad to be back with another episode of Edit Speaks. Today's question comes from JBarrMusic on Instagram, and he says, I'd love to hear your perspective, especially with your background heavy in collaboration, is how do you deal with creative differences without taking it personally? When I write music, I become so emotionally invested in what I write that if a collaborator says they disagree and they want to try a different direction, I often get hurt because it feels like an attack on my style or taste, though logically I know it's not. How do you navigate these moments while working with multiple people on projects? JBarr, this is a great question. I personally like to think of creative collaborations in a similar way to being in a relationship with someone. And if we use the relationship analogy, a collaboration is no longer purely just about ourselves. The needs of our collaborators need to be as important as our own needs. And the magic happens at the intersection point when we all come together to create the quote unquote baby, which in this case is the song you guys are creating together. But this could be a video, a dance, a piece of art, a movie, whatever it is that you're creatively creating with someone else. And if we use the analogy of a relationship, I like to ask myself, what can I give to this relationship? Not what can the relationship give me? How can I best show up? What is it that we're collectively trying to create together? I like to take the approach of setting my own ego aside and recognizing that it's not about me and my vision only. You know, it's about the collective vision, and that my collaborator's vision is equally as important as mine. That it's not about me controlling the situation. It's about both of us coming together to be in service of the music. That's really the most important thing, that we're both looking out for the music's best interest first and foremost. So JBarr, if you are struggling with feedback from your creative partner, one idea could be that maybe there's an issue with trusting your partner and releasing yourself from the need to control the situation. If your feelings are getting hurt from feedback, it could be that your brain is misinterpreting the feedback. And this is a muscle that we constantly have to work on in order to properly process feedback as something constructive and not take it personally. You know, often when I'm collaborating with Josh on Glitch Mob tunes, he might give me feedback and say something like, man, you know, there's something about this tune that's not quite there. You know, there's something about this section where, you know, the energy's not right. And yeah, the vibe's just not on point. And nowadays I'll often say, okay, cool, you know, all good. Why don't you try to execute your vision and try to get the tune to where you think it should be, and we'll take it from there. And it's in these moments that I'm dropping my ego, I'm dropping the sense of control, and I'm giving him the opportunity to execute what he thinks is best for the tune. And I'm giving the creative process space for me to be surprised by something that I didn't expect to happen. I'm being curious, and I'm openly inviting in something that wasn't my own vision. You know, I'm having full trust in Josh and in the process that when we come together to create, magic will happen. And maybe Josh might try something and nothing comes of his idea, and that's totally okay. But at least I gave him the space and the freedom to try that. And sometimes allowing your creative partner to try their idea can oftentimes lead you back to the way that you initially envisioned the song to be. Oftentimes Josh might try his idea out, it's not working, so we forge ahead with what we initially had. So once again, if we use the analogy of collaboration being similar to a relationship, then the way that we communicate with our creative partner needs to be something that's cultivated constantly. Rick Rubin says the synergy of a group is as important, if not more important, than the talent of the individuals. It's not about either individual trying to control the situation or having dominant power in the situation. It's truly about coming together and meeting each other's needs on an equal level so that our creative spirits can be open to create the best art that we can. And to understand that we're all sensitive beings, and that in the creative process of collaborating, we are essentially the most vulnerable we are ever going to be with someone in the studio or over Dropbox or sending files over the internet, whatever it may be. We are going to be completely naked creatively in front of someone, and that trust and safety is extremely important in order to be fully vulnerable and open so that we can create from as pure of a place as humanly possible. And I firmly believe that impeccable communication is one of the key foundations to the lifeblood of any relationship. So JBarr, here's one thing I often like to practice. So for example, let's say your collaborator has made a comment about your drum programming and it's hurt your feelings. You could say something like, when you say the drums don't sound good on this track, it makes me feel like my creative contributions have not been appreciated and are not valid. Is there a way that you can reframe them in a way that's more constructive so that it doesn't feel like a personal attack on my craft or artistry? Can you reframe your comments in a way like, I think the drums could use some improvement, the energy's not quite there, maybe there needs to be a faster hi-hat pattern to translate the energy of this section in a better way? Is there some way you can keep the feedback more about how you and I are collectively trying to tell the story with this song, as opposed to comments where you say you don't like what I did? When we really work on how we communicate with each other, our hearts and creative spirit can be more open so that we can create more freely. Therefore, conflict is not something that we should shy away from in the collaborative process. It's something that we should invite with curiosity. Jefferson Fisher's got an amazing quote in his book, The Next Conversation, where he says, every hard conversation or conflict should have this mindset: have something to learn, not something to prove. And I think this quote is extremely profound because oftentimes in the creative process, we might be trying to prove our own worth to our collaborator, especially if it's a collaborator that we don't frequently work with, or maybe we're in different places. Like maybe you're an up-and-coming younger producer, you're collaborating with someone more established, and you want to flex on them. You want to flex your creative muscle and show them and prove to them that you're worthy, that you belong, and that you can hang in the established company that they're in. And oftentimes you might be trying to do too much out of ego, and you won't be in service of the tune itself. You might be trying to prove that you're incredible at drum programming or doing crazy edits or coming up with a really amazing melodic hook. And in turn, you might be trying to overdo it and overcook it and not be giving the tune exactly what it needs. And in all my years of making music and collaborating with people, I've realized that this kind of wisdom really only comes with time and experience. In my younger days as a younger musician with a chip on my shoulder, with something to prove, I was constantly trying to flex on others that I was collaborating with. It was almost like producing was a sport to me. If I was going into a room to collaborate with others, I wanted to go and drop 50 on all of them. But now as an older and wiser musician, I'm truly just trying to be in service of the music. And sometimes that might mean actually not doing that much to a tune. It could potentially mean not doing anything at all. I try to give the tune exactly what it needs and nothing more. I'm not trying to show off. I'm not trying to flex. I'm not trying to prove to the world that I'm an amazing producer. None of that. I'm not trying to get my ego involved. I'm not trying to think about what the tune can do for me or how it's gonna pop off, how it's gonna go viral, what DJs are gonna be playing it, how it's gonna blow up. I'm not trying to think about any of those things. I'm not trying to sweat the things that I can't control. I'm only trying to focus on what I can control. And what I can control is my effort. I can control my emotions and how I communicate with my collaborator in the creative process so that when we come together, we can create the best art possible. So I hope some of this perspective has helped you, JBar. Thank you for your question and let me know how it goes. And if you made it this far, thank you for listening. If you've got a question, a thought, or an idea, and you think it would resonate with a lot of people and you would like my perspective on it, please leave it in the comments below and I'll speak on it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Have a lovely day. Until next time.